Okay, can you hear me now? Just say yes if you can. Can you guys hear me? Cool. Thank you, Tori. Awesome. Cool. Good morning. Hi. So yeah, this is my first time having like an actual interactive experience with you guys, and I'm super excited about it because for 6 weeks now I've been teaching to a screen with no actual feedback. So it's really nice to see you guys here and join you. What I want to do is we're about halfway there with everyone joining, is why don't you just go ahead and just start typing in the chat section who you are, your name, where you're checking in from. And just so I can see who's virtually with me here, and so that the rest of our community can see that too. So I see Kristen and Tori and Delpha are here, and Lisa. Awesome. So yeah, if you guys just want to type in your name, where you're checking in from. Hi, Jennifer. Oh man, this is so beautiful. Hey, Delpha and Glastonbury. We got West Hartford, Jennifer Griffin and Margot, Kristen. Hey, Jill. You know, Jill, I'm not a West End girl anymore. I moved to Parkville. It's the end of an era. We've got Sandy. Hi. Jill, Lisa from Middletown, so happy to be here. Happy you're here. Linda Collins, hello. Oh, you're on your front porch. That's amazing. Wow, that's amazing. Awesome. So we're still waiting for about 10 more people. So we'll get started in a few minutes. But a couple things to set up. Maybe a journal if you're feeling inspired to jot some things down. And I'm gonna light some sage. I've already got my Nag Shampa going, but I'm gonna light some sage. So if you have something that you like to burn, I invite you to do so. And also in the comments section, in the chat section, I put a few links for you guys. So I have a link to a playlist for today's experience. It's just really beautiful, like chill chanting music. So it's not going to be too distracting. And I also have a few book titles that we'll get into later. So if you guys are wondering, they'll be there for you. Who else is joining us? Hey, Giovanna from Rockfall. Okay, I've never heard of Rockfall, but cool, welcome. If you have your oils and some aromatherapy that you'd like to use, go for it. I'm gonna use I'm Love because my heart is wide open with you guys this morning. So go ahead and grab some aromatherapy if you have that. There's no rush here, so if it's not readily available and you'd like it, go ahead and grab it. I'm just gonna take some deep breaths with you guys. If you logged on late, you can't see the links. Got it, thank you. I'll repost those shortly. So just trusting that you're taking some grounding breaths here. I'm seated on my sheepskin blanket. Maybe you have a blanket underneath you or a bolster. Maybe you're on your front porch. Let me just resend those links to you guys real quick here. Okay, there we go. Okay, let me resend those links for you, babes. Cool. Okay. Awesome. So let's get started. So I'm here so Holly and I just moved into a new apartment about 2 weeks after all of this happened. And it's a little studio apartment, but so much sunshine comes through. It's amazing. So I've got my bed here and my yoga mat here and my closet here. So I'm making the best of the small space that I have. So my intention with this webinar is, I wrote a blog post. I was at home reading and, really reflecting a few weeks ago, and decided to write my first blog post for you guys about 10 tips for a beautiful home practice. And the reason why I chose the word beautiful, because I wanted to say successful, but then I thought, well, that means that there's an unsuccessful way to do it, and there's absolutely not. And beauty is different for everybody. So I wrote this blog post and put it up and sent it out in an email and got so much feedback from our community that I decided to turn it into a webinar. The beauty about a webinar versus just reading some tips is it's interactive, and that's what we're all about at Vastu, right? Is that the community aspect. And what I want to set as a collective intention here is that we're all really vulnerable and honest and just really authentic about where we're at in our journey. I will meet you in that space. There seems to be a lot of sort of mixed emotions about setting up a home practice. So what I want you guys to know is that this is a safe container to be honest, to share feedback, and to, listen and look at the chat section as we go on later for the questions and answers, because you guys can learn from each other. And I'm really looking forward to learning from you. As I always say in class, thank you for being my student and thank you for being my teacher. As we've shifted into a digital platform, the more I know about obstacles that are coming up as well as triumphs, the better we can serve you. So I just wanted to preface it with that. Is there anyone else who's joining who would like to say hello? Hey, Leah, good morning. Leah just joined the digital membership platform, so welcome to the digital community. Can everyone change their chat to all panelists and attendees? Yes, so great point, Jennifer. So if you guys go to your chat box, on the bottom left, you'll see all panelists. You want to select it to all panelists and attendees. That way we can see what you're posting, not just me, right? So again, in the chat box, on the bottom left, you'll see a blue thing that says all panelists. Go ahead and zoom down to the second one that says all panelists and attendees. Hi, Michelle. Yes, you're gonna be outside in the fresh air. Awesome, beautiful. All right, so before we dig into some conversation, let's do some breathing, some breath work together. So you still don't have the links. Okay, hold on one sec. Let me resend the links one more time before we get going so you guys can have the playlist and the books and all that. And I will also send the links, guys, in the follow-up email as well. So I sent them there. Can you guys see those links to the playlist? Just say yes. Got it. Cool. We're good. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and close the eyes. Go ahead and close the eyes and feel free to sort of shift the weight from one side to the other, maybe roll the shoulders out a little bit. I always like to do some neck circles, some jaw circles, wiggle the forehead. Remember, nobody can see you, so do whatever you want to do here. Relaxing the thighs and the lower belly, soft belly. Let the belly receive the breath. So we're going to do what's called box breathing, but we're going to do a little twist with it, a little bit of a twist to it. This is a breath work that I learned recently. So box breath, in your mind's eye, you're tracing a box, right? A square. All four sides are equal. You're going to inhale, hold, exhale, and hold. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. And this is actually called 4 seasons breath. So each part of the breath has or correlates to a specific season. And I'll guide you through that visually as we're breathing in a moment. And what I really enjoy about this breath is it's a reminder that everything is passing, right? We're in a long winter, but guess what? Spring is right around the corner, right? Everything is passing. Everything is transiently beautiful in this world. So that's a really beautiful reminder for the climate that we're in, or any day that you're just kind of waking up not feeling so great. It's passing, right? What's coming is going. So go ahead and close the eyes, palms face down or up on the thighs. We'll take 3 cleansing breaths here, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Inhale, really fill beyond your default. Open mouth, exhale. And one more big breath in. And exhale. As we inhale, think of the season of spring, the tulips growing and sprouting out of the ground. Hold. Think of the bountiful, beautiful, abundant summer. Exhale, imagine the leaves falling from the trees, apples falling from the trees down to the earth. And hold the winter of the breath, the pause. Inhale back to spring, daffodils blooming, reaching for the sun. Hold the summer, the breath, the pregnant pause. Exhale, leaves gracefully fall from the trees, releasing. And hold the cold, the dark, the winter of breath. Inhale, tulips, roses sprout from the ground, reaching for the sun. Hold the bounty, the abundance of summer. Exhale, fall like leaves from the trees. And hold the cold, the dark, the underground of winter. Inhale, like spring, blooming, flourishing, rising, lifting. Hold the abundance, the sun, the summer. And exhale, leaves fall from the trees back to the earth. And hold the winter of the breath. Inhale, roots, petals rising from the earth up to the sun in spring. Hold the bounty, the abundance, the fullness of your lungs of the sun, summer. Exhale, slowly release the leaves down to the earth and fall. And hold the stillness, the silence, the quiet of winter. Keep on flowing through that on your own, inhaling, hold, exhaling, and hold. And as you're flowing through your 4 seasons breath, I want you to make it unique to you. Think of, in your mind's eye, what spring feels like for you. What does it smell like? What does summer remind you of? Fall and winter. What emotion does it bring up in your body? What color does it have? What are some memories? And know that all 4 seasons come and they go. Notice if any tension has gathered in your jaw. Relax the face. Find space in between your top and bottom row of teeth. See if you can even involve the skin and think of, how does the skin feel in these seasons? The sun on your bones, the chill of fall, the crisp of winter. See if you can lengthen all 4 parts of the breath now. Maybe you were counting in for 3. Maybe you counted now for 4 or 5. And you don't even need to count the breath. Just visualize it. Wherever you are in your seasons, complete one more full cycle. And when you're done, take a cleansing breath in through the nose and out through your mouth. So I pulled a card for us today from the moon deck, just to get some guidance and see if there's a message that the deck has to offer us. So this is the card I pulled. I shed habits that hinder my truth. I release and renew. I just thought that was so perfect. So just to read you what this card means. So when we've outgrown our old skin, we can shed the layers that no longer serve us. Certain habits reach an expiration date, giving us an opportunity to be renewed. Sometimes we're swept up by the motivation to change, and other times we resist letting go. So Snake is here to encourage you to shed, to release, and renew. She represents transformation, primal energy, and life force, which all need to cyclically shed for true regeneration. This is your time for rebirth. Let go of habits, stories, behaviors, or relationships that hinder your truth so you can experience an increased life force. If you hold on to them too tightly, they'll pollute the present moment. Your past has made you stronger and served its purpose. Yet now it can serve you on a new and more aligned pathway. Trust that it is safe to shed and have a fresh start. Perfect. Perfect for the season that we're in, the time that we're in, and the topic that we're talking about. So wonderful. So yes, I love it too. So if you guys haven't yet already, in the chat section in the bottom left, just scroll down in the Dropbox to all panelists and attendees, because we're going to start with a little bit of sharing. So again, my intention with the sharing is for you guys to read each other's comments as well, and I'll sort of just be the mediator in that. I would love to hear from you. One, are you practicing at home? Okay, and remember, let's be real and honest here. This is a safe space. Two, how often? Once a week, every day, haven't stepped foot on my mat yet. And three, what's the biggest obstacle that is coming up for you? Maybe that's as you've begun a home practice, what's an obstacle that's coming up for you? Or maybe you're someone who hasn't yet started, what's the biggest obstacle that's coming up for you? So again, are you practicing at home? If so, how often? And what's the biggest obstacle that's coming up for you? So let's wait for everybody to just kind of put their things in. And again, if you just want to be an observer of this conversation, that's cool too. You don't have to answer. And you guys can just answer your questions all in one message. So let's see, we've got definitely some yeses, a little bit. Some people are practicing 3 times a week, every other day or so, 4 to 6 times a week, once a week. Some people are doing yoga and meditation. So yeah, if you guys can include your obstacles as well. I'm gonna start writing these down. So some obstacles, we'll probably see some repeats, I'm sure. So we've got distractions. Yes, we will definitely talk about that today. The monkey mind. Great. We've got obstacles of tech stuff, okay. The dog, yes, distractions, time, absolutely. If you could include a little bit more detail, Leah, about what you mean by tech stuff. I'm curious about that. So other obstacles, time, absolutely. We have a student here, yes, so winding down, so time and all the other schoolwork. You know, someone's just walking daily, which absolutely can become a meditative practice. Missing the studio. Home feels like home, but I need to make my space better. Awesome, that's why we're here, right? To learn a little bit more about that. So the actual set and setting is important. So let's see. Every other week, I help homeschool my partner's 8-year-old. On the week when she's at her mom's, I practice every day. But with working from home and school, it's hard to practice, right? That's what's really interesting about the climate that we're in, is now we're working from home potentially and having to practice from home. So finding that space, right? That energetic barrier. So some people are practicing daily. Tori says, I really got out of the habit right before the at-home time when I had surgery and wasn't allowed to. I'm waiting on reconstruction and I don't really love how my body feels right now. Yes, I think that's my obstacle. I need to move towards more acceptance of what is. Absolutely, right? Because this would be an obstacle even if all studios were open and running, right? So this is a beautiful obstacle to face right now. Distractions, missing the structure of the studio. Yes, we can definitely talk about that. Thank you for sharing, Tori. Let's see, missing community and having people with you. Yes, yes. Obstacles, social medias. What do you mean by that, Michelle? I'm curious. Do you mean that you're sort of distracted by like the phone and you can get like caught up in that? Or is there something else there in terms of social media being an obstacle for you? Tommy, hey Tommy, he started waking up at 5 a.m. again to practice with Lisa 3 times a week and a little on the weekend, but motivation has been hard doing it alone. It's a different energy. Awesome. So it sounds like some accountability, right, in terms of an obstacle. So let's see, yes, go Tommy. I know, we're so grateful that Lisa's offering those early morning classes. Yeah, so lack of motivation due to lack of structure, Jennifer says. Leah says, this morning I was doing one of Jane's classes. The video kept stopping, which I didn't realize because I was in child's pose or down dog. Has definitely happened with classes from other sources as well. That's interesting. I'm not a tech person, but it's really good to know that, especially with the Vasu University. I would suggest maybe if you haven't already, trying a different browser. So if you're on Safari, maybe switching over to Chrome, that might be helpful. And it may just be the internet connection as well. But thank you for sharing that. And for future reference, if there's ever any tech glitches with Vasu University, send them our way because our team may be able to help with that. Because I know that feeling. It's happened to me a few times where I'm like, especially in restorative classes, and I'm like, okay, the teacher hasn't said anything for a while. And like 15 minutes later, I look up and I realize it's been paused the whole time. So Jennifer Griffin is practicing daily, pushing herself into more challenge. Concern is, as I try new things, am I doing it right? I also definitely feel my body achy and pushing. I'm also practicing meditation and gentle work. Another obstacle is stopping when I'm uncomfortable in class. I would push through. Stopping when I'm uncomfortable in a class that I would push through. Yes. So that's the interesting thing too, right? We don't have the teacher there to modify us and adjust us. So especially if we're learning something new, how do we know that we're doing it right? Right? And another thing that's really nice, as Jennifer had alluded to, is sometimes in class, especially if it's a more challenging class, the teacher will offer a suggestion of, hey, you know, take a child's pose if you need it. So what if the teacher doesn't offer that suggestion in the class that you've selected that day? Or what if you're not doing a class and you're just doing a little bit of self practice, right? So having that sort of voice in the back of the head that says, take a child's pose if you need to. Let's see, focus is one, obstacles, time and energy. Giovanna, you're a nurse. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And your schedule has been wonky. Yes, yes. And the energy of it, right? I would imagine you're carrying a lot of heavy energy from all that patient care. Needing to do spring clearing. Yes, today's a great day for some spring cleaning. So what Michelle was saying in terms of her distraction with social media is so many classes are offered in socials and is overwhelmed by them and can't choose which one to do, wanting to explore different movement modalities. So I end up not doing any and becoming frustrated and digging into scrolling again. I totally hear you on that. You know, I'm experiencing that myself with like webinars. Like there's like 25 webinars that I want to do a day and a week, and there's this flow and there's that flow. So it's like, yeah, we're not just, you know, zooming in on a studio schedule and thinking, do I want to do the 5:30 class or the 7 today? We have the whole globe offering us things right now, right? So absolutely. Yes. It helps with the video stopping if the teacher plays music. When the music stops, you know that the video has stopped. Yes. So that's great for these like live stream classes, right? And so some people are enjoying the structure that Vasu University offers. Jill says, squirrel. Yep, I totally get that. Right? The monkey mind. So it's hard to watch, Jennifer says, the computer and see the screen as opposed to seeing the teacher and other students get into poses that I'm not familiar with, right? So it's like that living, breathing energy of a yoga room, and I get that. I'm experiencing that on a different side of teaching, right? So I'm like instructing a class, but I don't know if you guys at home are getting it or not because I can't see that feedback. So it definitely goes both ways there. So, okay, let's kind of sum it up. Thank you guys for offering all that feedback. We've got distractions. We've got the monkey mind, the squirrel, as Jill says, time, and time is an obstacle, whether it's an in-studio or an out-of-studio practice, right? Because when we were in studio and I met with new students every week, time was a big obstacle that came up for them. Set and setting, so having a space that inspires you to practice or setting yourself up with some props and all of that. Structure. Community, so missing that feel of an actual room full of people and guidance from the teacher and looking and connecting to your neighbor next to you. And accountability, right? So, you know, Tommy had alluded to those morning classes, right? Like those 6 a.m. Vasu classes, they were like, all the classes actually are a little community within the community, right? So if we're missing or we sign up for class and then we take ourselves off the roster, there's some accountability piece there. So really, really good feedback, guys. And we'll definitely touch on, I think, most of it. And, you know, if you find that there's an obstacle that I don't address throughout this webinar, definitely we'll circle back on it at the end. So awesome. We'll go through about 5 tips and then take a little break, open the forum up for questions, and then wrap up with the other 5 tips. Sound good? So I wanted to share with you guys first, before we go into this, my story of kind of like what my journey has looked like as all of this has unfolded. So we've been closed for about 6 weeks now, in quarantine for about 6 weeks now or so. Does anyone else feel like time has gone by? It feels like a lifetime, right? It's like this weird paradox of time is going by so slowly, yet all of a sudden, like the day goes by, right? Yeah, Tommy, you feel that way? Slowly and quickly all at once. Yes, it's so weird. It's so weird, right? But it is what it is. So when the studio first closed, I'll never forget, you know, I was taking a Monday noon restore, and just before the restore class started, we got an alert from the governor that all businesses, fitness studios had to close down. So this was about 15 minutes before the restore class started. I was in child's pose in the restore class, and like a slice of sunshine was just on me and on my mat. And I just started crying because I didn't know what the future held, right? And it was a very kind of overwhelming and sad experience. And as all the students were leaving the class, you know, we hugged and everyone was just like, see you on the other side, you know? And so for the first few weeks, honestly and transparently, I didn't practice. I was in fight or flight. I was in, oh fuck, as was the rest of the world, right? But for our own reasons. I felt as if someone had dropped like a rock into the ocean or a lake, and it was starting to sink. And I felt like my job was to do this with the water so that it didn't sink. So energetically, emotionally, this is what I was doing for like 2 weeks, and I'm talking about like the studio, but I know that this affected everyone in such different ways, but this is what I was doing, right? So slowing down, taking deep breaths, meditating, practicing yoga was not on my priority list, So for a few weeks I wasn't practicing. And what happened as a result of that is I sunk into a really dark space, and I think it's a combination of all the things, right? It's a combination of I wasn't practicing yoga. I wasn't teaching yoga, which lights me up more than anything else in the world. I wasn't touching people, right? My purpose was paused, or so it felt like it. And slowly but surely, I felt the practice luring me back in. It was like it needed to happen, right? I always know for me when I have a regular yoga practice, and before, for me, a regular yoga practice was about 3 to 4 times a week. And I knew if a few days had gone by and I hadn't practiced, I would start getting irritable and grumpy, and that was my reminder to get back on the mat before even like physical stiffness and the need to stretch. So I started practicing again. But what I was doing was driving to the studio to practice. And I think that needed to happen for me, right? There were moments where I sat in the studio and cried in Shavasana and grieved just regarding the situation that we were in and being in a room that is usually filled with people and there's nobody there. But I felt all of you guys. So that driving to the studio and practicing there kind of was a part of the process for me, but it was also a part of me like still stuck in the old way, like, wait, I don't have to practice in the studio. Okay. So that was part of the process. And then I started to practice at home. And it started off as, let me just roll my mat out here because there's space. And it wasn't here, it was in the living room. I'm in like a studio apartment, very open space. So I don't have like a room for this and a room for that. It's very much creating my own spaces. So I just kind of rolled my mat out in the living room and rolled it back up and started to bring some props home from the studio. And then I started to discover all different other styles of yoga too. So I was taking classes with our teachers. I was taking classes with teachers in studios that I visited all over the country. And it was beautiful to experience an expanding of my yoga horizon. And I've discovered new styles of yoga that I've ordered some books on. I've gotten new books to read more about different breath work and pranayama. And what started to happen for me is I became the student again. For so much of my life, I've been the teacher, the yoga teacher, the nursing instructor, the nurse, right? And I became the student. And I know deep down in my bones that as a yoga teacher, I am my only first student, right? As a yoga teacher, I am my eternal student. And I know that, but I wasn't giving myself that gift. So now for me, last weekend, I really set up my space with intention. And now I get on my mat every day, but it looks entirely different. And that's one message I really want to deliver to you guys is do this and let go of what you were doing. Let go of, it was an 1.5-hour class 3 times a week with this teacher and this style of class. And kind of like our snake card showed us, right? This is a time to renew. So for me, you know, I'm doing an hour and a half class maybe once a week on like a Sunday. And most of the other times my classes are 20 minutes, 45 minutes. Sometimes it's a guided class. So I have a plethora of resources where I choose a class, whether it's Vasu University or other platforms that I'm subscribed to. Sometimes I'll be reading about a yoga flow and do it that way. And sometimes it's just listening to a yoga nidra in bed, right? Because I'm really tired and just need a little nurturing that day. Sometimes it's just sitting on my mat and doing some breath work, right? So I have my mat laid out, and my vow to myself is to get on it every day and know that it's going to look entirely different than it would in studio. All right, so that's been sort of my journey, and that's why I'm really passionate about this topic. You know, especially as we lift into a digital platform, it's been really humbling for me, first and foremost, to experience what this transition has been like, so that I can understand, you know, because it's one thing to say, hey, do X, Y, and Z, no problem. But until you've lived it and really gone through your own experience, we can't fully understand, right? So I hope some of that resonates with you guys. All right, so let's start with tip number 1. Ain't no shame in my prop game. You guys will hear me say this a lot in class, right? So just getting the props that you need. So I know like the first few weeks it was sort of like, use a dog leash for a strap and use a pillow for a bolster, use some books for blocks, and maybe you'll continue to do that, and that's awesome. For me, if I know I'm going to be here for a while, I want to really set myself up for success. It kind of reminds me of like when you're traveling and you get to the hotel room, you unpack, right? You know you're going to be there for a day, 2 days a week. Unpack, put your things in the drawers, hang your things up, set your space, right? Versus just living out of this suitcase. So I included in the blog link some prop recommendations. And just think about what you would use in the studio, right? So I have a bolster, and I actually got myself a new bolster because energetically the other one just wasn't being used, and I was ready for something new. So I borrowed one of the bolsters from the studio. It also was like a little piece of the studio in my home. I have 2 blocks. I really like the cork blocks that we use at the studio. I just love the way they look. Cork is naturally antibacterial, antimicrobial. So cork is like an ecosystem in and of itself that is self-cleaning. I grabbed one of the eye pillows from the studio and a strap. And I also grabbed a couple of the nap blankets from the studio. So the nice thing about a home practice is you can use as many blankets as you want. You can take like 5 eye pillows. You can have 2 bolsters. But I would recommend those as a good starting point. That way you're able to do a restorative class. You're able to challenge it up with some blocks. And you're not running around and scrambling for the props that you need. So number 1, no shame in the prop game. So as we always say in class, props are there to support us, and they can also help deepen and strengthen our practice as well. So really setting yourself up for that. Tip number two is find your sanctuary. So I think it was Delpha who had said, you know, finding a space in her home and like not really like loving the space. So as I had shared from my story, the first few weeks of my home practice was, oh, let me just throw my mat down and do it here because there's a slice of floor that's open and I'll do it. And what I learned is helpful for me is to keep my mat out. Right, so if you have a space where you're able to keep your mat out all the time, I personally find that helpful because it's just like a nice reminder, right? Every time you walk by it, it's like, hey, don't forget about me, right? And even though it's so small, just the obstacle of taking your mat, rolling it out, it's an energetic barrier. Right? So if the mat's already laid out for you, your props are already set up, at least this stage is set. So in my blog post, I had made the suggestion of forget everything that you've been doing and that's ever happened. Take a few grounding breaths and explore your home, every single room, even outside. with new eyes. Explore your home with new eyes and set the intention of, where shall I practice? Show me where I should practice. And I know, Tommy, you had talked about rearranging your furniture like 500 times. I hear you. You know, that's great feng shui. So think outside the box. Maybe it means you move the couch over a little bit, or you bring the TV over to that corner instead. This is a great time of year to move around furniture and get some feng shui going. They say if you want to change your life at this moment, touch 25 objects in your home. For me, last week, when I was really starting to settle into my home yoga practice, I moved my bed. My bed was this way. I moved my bed to the corner. I set up a little space here. So again, walking through your home with new eyes, with the intention of, where am I going to really set up my practice? You know, the first few weeks that we were in quarantine, everything was like, this is also temporary, so let me just do what I need to do right now. But we don't know how much longer we're going to be in this space, one. Two, isn't this a beautiful lesson in being present? So whether the quarantine was one day or longer, we should still fully settle in to the home practice. And three, even when quarantine lifts, I invite you to still keep a home practice, right? So set that intention that this isn't temporary. This is for the rest of your yoga journey, to serve and support you, right? Because once studios open back up, your home practice will still be there, right? To support you. So finding your sanctuary, tip number 2. Tip number 3 is bring an offering to your space. So for those of you who are sort of like unsure of how to set up your space, right, beyond just your yoga mat and your props, I have some suggestions for you. So one of these may resonate with you, none of them may, and maybe you have suggestions of what else you can bring into your space. But step 1, I like to have a deck. Oracle deck, a tarot deck. Now that's not to say that every time I sit on my mat I pull from a deck, but sometimes I do, right? Like this morning I did, right? So keeping a deck in your space is great. You know, maybe it's before your morning meditation or before your practice. You just ask a question, right? What am I going to receive from this practice today? What is my intention for the day? Sometimes we're so clear on that without needing outside assistance, but sometimes a deck can be really helpful with that. Sheena, I know you're on this call and I know you have about 15 decks at home, right? So feel free, you guys can drop some deck recommendations here in the comments section. Another thing that I like to suggest is a journal. So for those of you who like to write, writing is a yoga practice, right? It's flow. You're flowing from pen to paper, from heart to the external world. So I like to keep a journal there. Sometimes things come up for me on the mat, like ideas, right? Or inspiration for another workshop, or maybe the teacher says a quote that I love, or does a breath work that I love and I don't want to forget it. So I'll write it down. Or sometimes before I start my practice, you know, Michelle, you had been talking about the monkey mind. Journaling is a great way to do what Tim Ferriss refers to as unleash the monkey mind. So we wake up in the morning and our monkey mind is hammering at the cage, and we've had dreams, and we've got our to-do list, and we've got conflicts from the night before. So word vomit onto a journal is a great practice to do before you practice. Just dump the monkey mind. Literally think of it as unleashing your monkey mind and freeing him or her before you practice. So a journal is really helpful. I love to read. You know, I often will almost always include a reading before, during, after yoga classes. So of course I love to incorporate that practice for myself as well. So a couple books on your altar or by your mat may be helpful for you. So a couple recommendations here. You guys know by now I am obsessed with this book. So this is The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo. What I like about this is it's a daily read. So I will just look at what day it is, and I need to refer to the calendar these days because time is warped. But we turn to the day, you turn to May 2nd. I did this morning before meditation, right? So I was up on my bolster, I turned to today's reading, I lit some sage, and I read. And the way he writes in this book is just, for me, like so profound and so beautiful. So I slowly read it, slowly. You know, that's one thing I'm realizing too, is how quickly I breeze through reading. So I take my time, I read through this, I put it down, and I meditate on the reading, on what came up for me, on the feeling of the sun on my skin. So a daily read is helpful for those of you who like to refer to something every day. You know, it's a great practice for me as well, because if I haven't done it for a few days, there's a visual reminder of that. Like I literally have to skip through a few days that I've missed, that I've neglected my daily read, to land on today. So it's a nice reminder of that. A daily read is also a really nice reminder of being in the moment, right? I love the way Mark Nepo writes. I could just sit down and read the whole book cover to cover in one sitting. However, I turn to today's reading, I find gratitude for his beautiful words, and then I put it down and know that tomorrow's reading will be there for me. So daily reads, there's so many different ones out there. Another recommendation I have for a daily read is called Meditations from the Mat by Rolf Gates. So this one doesn't have like the date like the other book does. So I just keep a little bookmark in there and just open it up and read it. It goes through the 8 limbs of yoga and has daily offerings. So not only are you having something beautiful to read every day, but it's taking you on a journey of the philosophy of the yoga practice. So if I ever meet people, either teachers or students, who want to dive a little deeper to like the philosophy of yoga, this is definitely a book I recommend. I don't read this one every day. So today I woke up, I did my Book of Awakening, I sat in meditation for 5 minutes, and then I did a 15-minute yoga flow and read this before. So usually I'll read this before I do a yoga flow. So that's Meditations from the Mat. And then this one that I've, rediscovered in this time is The Art of Attention by Elena Brower. So, she is just such a beautiful human. She's based out of New York City. And what I love about Elena Brower and this book is it's beautiful. Visually, it's beautiful. And you kind of take from it what you need. So she offers yoga flows in here. Let's see if I can flip to one. So she'll offer yoga flows in here. Let's see. Yeah, so she kind of does like a little sketch of some yoga flows. So it's a great way for you to just discover a flow on your own. She has sections for journaling, journal prompts. It's aesthetically a beautiful book. There's just so much beauty in it. And it's one of those things, like, I'll pick it up if I'm just in need of a little inspiration. I can trust that just reading a few pages from her book will sort of open up a wave of creativity for me. So that's The Art of Attention. It's one of those books you pick up, you put down, and you revisit, and it's just absolutely beautiful. She also has a deck as well. So you guys have put some of your deck recommendations in there. Thank you. Yes, so definitely, guys, refer to these recommendations. Always looking for new recommendations. Ooh, the medicine cards. I actually just ordered a deck called Earth Warriors that should be here any day now. Ooh, a yogic path. Is that, what's her name? Sahara Rose, the yogic path deck, Lisa, I wonder. That's the beautiful thing. Yes, cool. That's the beautiful thing about decks is sometimes like the yogic ones. So for those of you who aren't necessarily drawn to like more of the mysticism, the yogic ones are beautiful because you pull it and it just gives you a pose, right? And maybe you do that pose or learn a little bit more about the pose. So decks, journal, book. What else was on the list of offerings? Oh, flowers. So for me, I have brought my snake plant, which actually one of our yogis gave me, a little one like 2 years ago, and I put it in, she brought it in a mason jar in water, and I put it in soil and it's grown. So I really enjoy snake plants for a few reasons. One, they're low maintenance. To me, they're very yogic, like their energy is lifting up. They're really like flowy and flexible. And it's beautiful to have something in your space that you water and you fertilize and you can see it grow. I mean, isn't this just a beautiful symbol for what we're doing every day when we step onto our mat? Right? And so visually, when you can see it grow, it's a beautiful reminder you're growing, right? Also, the beautiful energy of breathing with the plants, right? That's why we have the living wall in the studio. My exhale becomes that plant's inhale, and their exhale becomes my inhale, and it's just so beautiful. Jennifer says she misses the plants of the studio. So if you can't have plants or flowers because of your cats, no problem. Sometimes even just a beautiful photo of a flower is helpful, right? It still provides that feeling. An alternative, if you're seeking to keep the vibration clean, strong, growing, are crystals. I don't have any crystal. Oh, I do. So I have, so Jennifer, I don't know if you have crystals at your altar, but crystals are great. They're living, right? Just like the plants are, and they help absorb and transmute energy. So I keep this one on my altar with my dream spray. This is amethyst, right? So amethyst is really good for opening up your third eye, getting into meditation. It's great for protection and dream state. So this is where you can really have fun and go crystal shopping, right? And think about, ooh, I love the color of that one. You know, Jen, maybe you could get like a green crystal, right? Some jade to sort of bring in that green element. I also have some plants propagated here, right? So eventually I'll put those into soil, and it's just this beautiful living energy. Yeah, so just being mindful of what plants are toxic to animals. I have tons of plants, and I'm making sure that they're not going to poison little Luna and little Augie. Another option too is you could hang up a shelf and put some plants up there so your cat or dog can't reach them. So let's see, we've got flowers. Another thing I like to bring to my altar is a candle. Again, I don't necessarily light this every time, just like I don't pull a card every time, but these are just tools in your tool belt. So a candle is really nice if you're doing an evening meditation or yoga practice. You know, Sally Kempton, who's a really well-known meditation teacher, says that when we light a candle, it's inviting and calling our soul forward. Literally, the flame of the candle is whoop, calling your soul to attention. To me, what I also like about a candle is you light it when you start your practice and you blow it out when you're done. So it signifies a beginning and an end, right? It sort of seals your practice in. It's also bringing in another element, right? Fire, right? So we've got the earth element with crystals and plants. We've got fire here. Let's see if there's any other offerings. So another offering for your space could be a photo, right? I have a really beautiful quote up here that I love. Always believe that something wonderful is about to happen. So maybe that's an inspiring quote for you, a truth bomb. Some people like to put photos of their mentors or teachers, family. You could put a photo of a Hindu god or goddess, a deity, someone you're trying to channel in and call in the energy of. So some people really enjoy having photos there or inspiring quotes, just something that sort of really helps guide you, right? So all of these things that we're bringing to our space, plants and books, it turns it into an altar, right? It becomes sacred. And that's so much about what we like to offer at Vasu is turning your there's the dog. turning your routines into rituals, right? Not just I get on the mat and I practice for 20 minutes a day, but there's meaning behind it. It's a space I enjoy being in. The energy is moving and shifting, right? So those are some offerings that you can bring to your space. So tip number 4, use your senses. So you guys know, most of the people who are joining in on this webinar are Vasu members. You guys know how passionate we are about utilizing the senses. Again, using the senses turns your routine into ritual. I utilize my senses in almost every single thing I do these days. Otherwise, I just plow right through it and skim over the surface without really settling in. So I have my oil diffuser here. So when I first come into my space in the morning, I'll light some sage, some nag champa, and I'll turn on my diffuser. And I put in my diffuser whatever oil resonates. So if I'm doing a morning practice, I'll put like orange or lemongrass. If I'm doing an evening practice, I'll put in some lavender, some chamomile, some ylang ylang. So diffuser is really nice. It also makes the space smell beautiful. I love burning things. So some people do, some people don't, right? And that's totally up to you. And again, that's the nice thing about practicing at home is you can do whatever you like, right? So I have sage here. So I oftentimes will get the question, why burn Palo Santo versus sage? So sage for me feels very like uplifting. It's really good at clearing energies, right? So think of it like a lint remover for your energetic fields. It's very uplifting. And then Palo Santo, I'll typically reserve for evening practices. This to me is very grounding. So somebody once compared this to white wine and red wine. White wine, you drink on a summer day, it tends to be chilled. Red wine makes you a little sleepy and it's a little bit warmer, right? So Palo Santo, sage. I also have a whole big thing of mugwort here. Michelle, this is from the stash that you gave me last summer, 2 summers ago. So mugwort I like to burn at night. Before I go to bed. So mugwort really helps us enter the dream state and allows for better dream recall. Sometimes I'll burn sweetgrass. So that's over at one of my other altars, but sweetgrass is really beautiful. It comes braided and it smells like bread to me. It's got like a very sweet sort of like vanilla-y flavor to it. And to me, like there's something very nostalgic about it. It reminds me of like being a kid and just playing in the grass all day. So the point being, we've got senses with a diffuser. Yes, mugwort. Oh, we've got things to burn, right? And then of course we have all of our products, right? All the Vasu products. So Holly actually filmed some new video content for you guys. And if you go to our online store later and you click on each product, there's actually a couple-minute video clip that Holly did on each product. And it goes into like the healing properties of the product, why she chose the aromatherapy that she did, some storytelling about the product. So you're not just using your senses when you pick like a Vasu oil, but there's intention behind it, right? So each product, you guys know, comes with a mantra. So sometimes I'll choose the I am love because I'm needing some heart opening that day. Sometimes I choose it because I just love the way it smells, right? So I really recommend having all 3 because this is, again, the nice thing about a home practice is you get to decide. So when we go to a studio class, we sort of just open our hand to whatever oil the teacher is selecting for that class that day. But when you have everything at home, you decide what you get to use, right? So choosing from one of the products, and then the sprays, of course, the sprays. Make sure you're still spraying your mat down every day with clean yogi spray just to keep it fresh and moving. I love to use the sacred space spray. Like before we got on this call, I did a few sprays of sacred space just to clear the energy. And then the dream spray, of course, I love using at night. keep it. I got one right there. I love using it at night to just seal myself in. You know, my body remembers like, ooh, this is what happens before Shavasana. So the point is to just utilize your senses and pick with intention. So maybe you have a diffuser at home, but you've just been putting lavender in it for years and years and years. Maybe it's time to switch it up and to really reignite the senses, remembering what season we're in. How's your energy feeling? What do you need that day? What are you gravitating towards? So yes, utilizing the senses. Cool. So tip number 5, disconnect to reconnect. Disconnect to reconnect. So you guys might remember from the studio, but in the cubby area where you guys leave your phone and your keys in your wallet, we actually have a sign that says disconnect to reconnect. So the importance of a home practice is that you hold that standard for yourself. So at Vasu, we're a phone-free studio, both in the yoga studio, in the lounge. Our staff doesn't use phones. And, you know, as some of you guys had alluded to, like the phone's there. We're like in child's pose and like texting at the same time. So what I really want to invite you guys to do is hold that standard that we have at the studio for yourself at home. So what does that look like? For me, it looks like my phone is not allowed in this room when I'm practicing. It's just not. I leave it on airplane mode in the kitchen. And I like turning on airplane mode because it's just an energetic barrier. Like I'm not available right now. Because if I didn't put it on airplane mode, I might be in a juicy restorative pose and then my phone starts vibrating or ringing or an alarm goes off or something like that. So keeping your phone out of your space. Another thing I mean by that is show up to your practice a few minutes early. You know, for a studio practice, you don't show up 30 seconds before class, sit down and start, right? Unless there's traffic. You show up a little bit early, you get your tea, you find the spot for you, you close your eyes, and you take a deep breath and you arrive, right? So I really invite you guys to do that at home, to arrive early to your space. Now we've sort of lost the structure of class time per se, but still just show up and give yourself a minute or two wiggle room when you're planning your practice and your day to just arrive. Another tip for you guys is if you're utilizing the Vasu University, I really recommend plugging it in, running an HDMI cable into your TV. So again, you know, maybe you don't practice in front of your TV. Like for me, I don't own a TV. So I set up my laptop on my bed. If you have a TV at home and that's where your space is going to be, for optimal visualization, link your computer up to your TV. Otherwise, find a set spot that you're always going to place your iPad or your computer. A lot of people have been either linking their computer or their iPad up to like an external speaker. That's what I do when I practice at home. I have a Bose speaker. Or some people have been using like the wireless earphones as well. So a lot of these practices from Vasu University do incorporate some sound healing. So it's really nice to be able to hear that for optimal sound. And then the last thing I recommend too is going to the specific playlist. You know, under each class that we have on Vasu University, there's a link to a Spotify playlist. So a lot of you guys had shared that you're really missing the music that we play. You know, that's one thing our teachers love and enjoy is designing and curating a playlist for your class. So you can always choose to link the music up. Some days I don't want music, which is new for me. Some days I just want to hear the teacher and my breath, right? Some days I find the music a little distracting, but some days I'm all about it. And what's been helpful for me if I'm choosing to do the playlist is I actually will play the playlist on a separate device than the teacher is speaking through, because sometimes I find like they're competing with one another. So I may play the playlist from my iPad and channel the yoga class through my computer. So those are just some helpful tips. So again, turn off phone if you're able to. If you're unable to, like for those of you who are mamas out there, or you're on call as physicians, or whatever the case may be, I would suggest turning your phone on to do not disturb mode. When you go into the settings of your phone and you choose do not disturb mode, you can actually pick certain people that can get through that. So family members, babysitters, things like that. So you have your phone in case of an emergency, but you're not available to absolutely everybody in your circle. Augie's joining us. Hello, Augie. All right, guys, so we're halfway through the tips, and the first 5 are sort of like practical how-tos, and it's already 11 o'clock. Oh my gosh. So let me just see what questions you guys have. So Jennifer is saying, how do we use the playlist during class on the same device? Yeah, so this I ran into this yesterday when I was doing a class. So if you're opting not to have your phone, you're just playing from one device. So to be honest, I usually won't do the playlist if it's on the same device, because I find it a little distracting and I want to mostly hear the teacher's voice first and foremost. If it's really important to you to have the music, then I suggest getting a second device. So what you could do is turn your phone on do not disturb mode and just pull up the Spotify playlist. I did that a couple days ago, and I put my phone all the way on the other side of the room. So all I could do is hear the music from that phone. Do you need to have a Spotify account to listen to the playlist? Yes. So all of our playlists are Spotify playlists. However, you can do a free Spotify account. You don't need to pay for this subscription to listen to the playlist. Let's see. So Lisa says, it's been so much easier practicing with Voss University on my TV. I don't own a computer, but I can access the classes on Fire TV and it works perfectly. So yeah, this is just a beautiful example of all things are going to work for us differently, right? I don't own a TV. Lisa doesn't own a computer, right? So just find what works for you. That's the beautiful part of the technological age that we're living in, is there's lots of options, right? What are the recommendations for props? I miss Vasu's big bolsters. So what I can do is send some links to you guys with prop recommendations. We use a company called Gurus for our mats and for our straps and for our blocks. The bolsters we got from like a wholesaler, but I've been recommending Walmart, to be honest. There's a bolster I think for like $17 on there that I really like, and you can choose the different colors. And then I'll send some links to you guys for sage and Palo Santo. What's really important is you want to make sure that it's ethically sourced, right? And fair trade. And then of course, Nag Champa. It wouldn't be Vasu without Nag Champa. Again, some people hate sage and Palo Santo and all of that. If that's you, maybe you do the smokeless version of it with the Sacred Space Spray. The intention of all of them is the same, right? So Kristen says, get our reboot box. Yes. So we just launched our Holy Smokes kit. Thanks for that little plug there, Kristen. You guys will be seeing it soon on the website. It's actually a little kit with an Abalonian shell, sage, Palo Santo, and a mini Sacred Space Spray. The cutest thing ever. So stay tuned for that. It comes in our reboot kit. So cool. And you guys who are members, you guys all get 20% off all things online. For those of you who aren't members, well, you'll get $5 off products. We'll send a link for that. Cool. So let's move on to some of the other things. So tip number 6, and this speaks to a lot of our obstacles. Distractions are your teacher, right? They're your teacher. So do you guys remember the train that would go by every 5 minutes in the studio, or the person who's driving blasting reggaeton, or the ice cream truck, or the student next to you that's sneezing, right? Like there's distractions in a yoga studio too. Let's not forget that, right? They're everywhere and they will show up every day. Like this little guy here. He's a big distraction for me sometimes. I love you, Augie, but you're a distraction. So distractions are everywhere. So let's flip them on their head and instead view them as our teacher, Let the distractions be your teacher. Let them be an invitation to anchor back into your body, because it's no different than it is at the studio than it is at home, right? So so distractions at home, the refrigerator, right? I'm hungry halfway through class. You're right in the middle of a class and the mailman comes knocking at your door. You've got kids running around. You're working from home and you know you've got that deadline to meet at 4 p.m. Your husband, your partner, right? There's so many distractions. Just face the fact that they're going to be there. Take some deep breaths and move through it. Isn't this why we practice? You know, so often I'll say in class, usually when the train rolls by and serves as a distraction, that we don't need to be in the Himalayas. We don't need to be in the Berkshires at Kripalu to find peace. We can be in the midst of all this chaos. Remember the wind at the studio that would just rattle the room sometimes? There's always going to be distractions. Right now, there's someone playing music right outside my window. There's always going to be distractions off the mat and certainly on the mat. So just face that with a light heart and keep on flowing, right? What a beautiful lesson to take off of our mat. All these distractions that come through, accept them and keep on flowing. So yes, we could go on and on and on about all the distractions, and maybe it's helpful for you to write them down, acknowledge them, and move on from that. And every time that distraction comes in, take a deep breath and view it as an invitation to enter back into your practice, right? How do we do that? With a deep breath. So tip number 7, remembering that your practice is the goal. The practice is the goal. So when we go into like a Ignite class, for example, maybe the teacher has decided for us that day that core is the goal, right? Maybe we walk into a restorative yoga class and the teacher has decided today that peace is the goal. So the beautiful thing about a home practice is all that needs to be the goal is getting on your mat. And that's enough, right? And then you get to decide, do I want a shoulder opener today? Do I want more of a heated class? Do I just want meditation and some guided sound? You get to decide the time, the style, the intention, the oil, the focus. You get to decide. The only goal is that you get that practice in. That's the goal, right? So often we can be so goal-oriented on our yoga mat, right? And it's great to have these goals, right? But just remember that the practice is the goal. That's enough. That is enough. And that's why I like keeping my mat out all the time so that I can visually see it. All right, tip number 8, you guys know the sign we have above our altar, come as you are. Come as you are. So maybe that means you haven't showered yet. Maybe even you haven't showered for a couple days. I know that's been me lately in quarantine. Woo! Maybe that means you're in a really bad mood that day, right? Maybe it means your monkey mind is rattling. Maybe it means you've got tattered yoga pants on, or maybe you're still in your pajamas. Come as you are, right? There's going to be days where your practice feels beautiful, and there's going to be days where it just feels messy and disjointed, and you don't really understand what you got off the mat that day. And both are valid. Just like in this experience of quarantine that we're going through, you have days where you're feeling gratitude and you're feeling connected virtually for people and you're feeling grateful for your pets or whatever. And then you have days where you feel isolated and alone and depressed and dark, and both are valid. We're not always aiming to be here in the good vibes only space. That's not what we're here for, right? I always say in class, invite all parts of you to your practice today. All parts of you. The wonky shoulder, the busy mind, the flexible parts, the inflexible parts. Maybe you don't wear a bra to practice the other like the other day I did a class with Sarah. I wasn't even planning on taking the class, and I was scrolling through my social media, and boom, a live class with Sarah Balkin popped up. Wasn't wearing a bra, wasn't wearing yoga clothes, but my mat was laid out and it was right on time, so I did the class with her, right? So come as you are. This is where I really want you guys at home to feel our mission in your home, right? It stands true wherever you are. It's a way of life. And the way you practice is the way that you live. So you can choose to let obstacles hinder you. You can choose to let your messy hair and not being prepared and a little underhydrated hinder you, or you can keep on flowing, right? So come as you are. Number 9, let it be easy. Danielle Laporte makes those truth bombs that we'll oftentimes pull in our yoga class, and that's one of my favorite ones. Let it be easy, right? A lot of feedback that I've heard from you guys in these last 6 weeks are the obstacles that are coming up. So I would like to serve as a reminder of all the obstacles that aren't coming up, right? We don't have to drive to the studio. You don't have to worry about getting stuck in rush hour traffic for that 5:30 Friday soul class. You don't have to worry about registering because you don't want the class to be full when you show up, right? Those obstacles have all been removed. Same with the obstacle of time. Oh man, that 7 p.m. restore, like I'm not gonna make it today. Time is not as much of a factor of an obstacle, right? So let it be easy. Again, a reminder, the way you practice is the way you live. So let it be easy, right? Be in flow. Again, that's why I keep my mat out, so that literally I can roll out of bed and do like a little bit of a happy baby in a fetal position and a few deep breaths, and boom, that's my practice for the day. Or maybe there's a little more structure and I choose a class and I have my playlist and it's an hour and a half and there's my practice for the day. But let it be easy. Our yoga practice is the practice in self-compassion, right? You guys hear me say this so often in class. The way you speak to yourself on the mat is the way you speak to everybody else. And it's true. So maybe that's the way you speak to yourself while you're in these yoga poses, or maybe it's the way you speak to yourself about whether you have or haven't set up a home practice and what it looks like. Like that's part of the practice too, is your conversation and your ease and your grace and your gentleness and your compassion with yourself about this whole process. And it is a process, So the way you speak to yourself on your mat is the way you speak to everybody else. So be kind, be gentle, take your time, The last tip is remember your why. It's not how we practice, it's why. And this relates to so many things beyond yoga, right? It's not how we do it, but it's why we do it. And I really want you guys to feel that, because, some of you guys had said, I don't know if I'm doing it correctly and there's no one here to adjust me and all of that. So when those thoughts come up for you, I invite you to come back to your why. Why did you choose to sit on your mat today? And are you honoring that in this moment, in this pose, in this breath? So I want you guys to just take a minute and think about your why. And we're not going to be sharing this, it's your why. But what is your why? Why do you practice yoga? And that's going to change, just like our 4-season breath. Certainly, my why now is different than it was 6 weeks ago. My why today might be different than my why tomorrow, right? And we have varying levels of why, right? The grand why do I practice yoga versus why am I here today to practice yoga? But I want you to take a moment and just think about your why. There's a quote that I love that says the physical benefits of yoga are what get us to the yoga mat, You know, so often when I meet new people at the studio and I ask them their why, it's flexibility and it's strength, right? So it's the physical benefits that get us to our mat. It's the psychological, mental, emotional, spiritual benefits that keep us on our mat, right? So maybe you show up for flexibility and strength, but then you start to realize as your practice unfolds, oh, this makes me a more patient person. Oh, this opens my heart. Oh, this has allowed me to release tension, emotion, stories, trauma in my body, right? So why? So let's just check in and see how we're doing. We have about 10 more minutes. I would love to open the forum for any feedback or questions that you guys have before we wrap up. I may or may not be able to get to all of them. And I also wanted to see if there's any obstacles that you shared that I haven't addressed. There was one that came up for me. Someone had shared about, a lot of people had shared about structure, right? So some of us do really well with structure, right? Some of us are those types of people who Google Calendar everything. We sign up for class like 2 weeks ahead of time, and that works well. Some people like to decide that day, oh, how am I feeling that day? What class do I want to do? I may or may not even sign up. I'll just show up, right? So there's two different people there, and I want you to honor whatever version you are in this moment, right? If you're the type of person who loves structure, create structure for yourself, right? So using Vasu University as an example, you see we have Ignite and we have Soul and we have 25-minute practices and we have meditations. So maybe, you know, you're working from home, you design your week and you put it in your calendar and you set a date with yourself and you hold yourself accountable for that. You could also head into the Vasu community closed Facebook page and say, hey guys, I'm looking for an accountability buddy. I'm really missing that component of the studio. Who wants to be my accountability buddy? And maybe you guys share with each other your uh-oh. Hold on one second. Okay, sorry, I got a phone call. Maybe you guys share with each other, hey, I'm going to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, a class at 5:30, and on Sunday, I'm going to do the soul class. And you guys can hold each other accountable, or you can tell your partner or a friend, right? So if you do well with structure, still create the structure for yourself. Sign up for class in your Google Calendar and set a date for that. I also would invite you to reanalyze how much of a structure person you really are, right? When we go back to our snake and know that this is a time to transform, maybe this is a time to dissolve your boundaries around structure. So speaking for myself, I do very well with structure. My whole life has been on Google Calendar. I've built a business around being organized and having systems. And the first few weeks were challenging for me because there's nothing on the calendar, there's no one or nowhere to report to. And in that space, I sort of thought, well, what if I don't need structure? Like, what does that look like for me? And I've really been able to like flow with that. Like I said, like I'll be scrolling social media and see a live and I'm like, I'm gonna do it right now. Right? Or I thought I was in my mind gonna do like an hour and a half Kundalini class that day, but like I only do a 10-minute meditation. So it's allowed me to go with the flow. And maybe for you, you find that balance between structure and going with the flow. Maybe you structure a few classes for yourself that week and allow the rest to unfold. So like Tommy, for example, likes to do the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 a.m. with Lisa. So there's that structure, there's that accountability. And then maybe the other few days, he truly sits on the mat, or you truly sit on your mat and you take a few deep breaths, or you pull a card, or you journal and you think, what do I need right now? And then you let the practice guide you, right? So let's see. Does anyone have any questions? Anything I didn't answer for you, or anything that's coming up for you that you wanted to get answered. So Jennifer says she loves structure, but even my days no longer have structure. Totally. But again, Jennifer, you can create that structure for yourself, right? So often we're used to like, gotta clock in at 9, gotta clock out at 5, gotta go to the 5:30 Ignite, gotta visit dad for dinner. So we can create that structure for ourselves, right? So for me, I've set up like a little morning routine that I do for myself. I don't set an alarm. I've let go of that structure, but some of you may have to, right? So you can create structure for yourself. You know, maybe you put in your Google Calendar what time you're going to eat lunch. Otherwise, we're just typing away and lunch break disappears. So, you know, what I love about a home practice, what I'm finding to be my most favorite thing about a home practice is it's giving us self-accountability and sovereignty, and knowing that I don't have to go to a studio to practice yoga. I don't have to go to a studio to feel inspired, to incorporate my senses, right? I don't have to have a teacher there to hold me accountable. I can do that myself, right? Isn't this a beautiful time to strengthen that or start working on that and really foster that and nurture that and build that and carry that with you even after all this is lifted, right? Bring that sovereignty, that self-accountability with you everywhere, even after the government tells us we can do this or we can't do that. I've created this sovereignty in this home practice that I'm going to carry with me wherever I go now. So let's see, Kristen. See you, Kristen. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Lisa says, I wanted to look at a week and I want to look at a week and balance the types of classes I take, along with self-led practice, a good amount of restore and soul, especially to unwind and soothe, and the right timing for ignite and vinyasa to energize. So beautiful, Lisa. That's a perfect example of being well-versed with our offerings and knowing how they make you feel, right? How does an ignite class make you feel? How does a restore class make you feel? And then zooming out and making sure that there's balance within your yoga practice, right? This is another really beautiful point, and thank you for bringing that up, is keeping balance within our yoga practice. This is a great time to shake it up. Maybe you were the type of person who went to ignite every Monday, every Wednesday, every Saturday. What about restore? Because maybe those restore classes didn't work for you time-wise, but now you can do them whenever you want, right? So yes, it's a beautiful point, Lisa. Thank you. Just zooming out and making sure that there's structure and balance, if that works for you. And some days it's just going with the flow. Like some days I just do 4 days in a row of a restorative practice. And I really like, and thank you, Lisa, for bringing that up, about self-practice, right? Like you don't have to take yourself through a vinyasa flow and make sure you get the left side and the right side and the up and the down. And, oh, did I do a twisting? And did we hit the peak of our sequences? You can do a self-practice. For me, a self-practice doesn't look like sun salutations and a vinyasa flow. It usually looks like I just hop on my mat and start stretching and, oh, I'm in down dog. Whoa, my hamstrings are tight today. Let me go into a little half split, or I'm going to linger there for a moment. The other day, my self-practice was I took out my bolster and I just laid down and supported fish pose and didn't have the intention even to do a practice, but then I went to another pose and another pose. And then before you knew it, I was in like a 45-minute restorative practice, you know? So again, this is where tools like the art of attention are helpful, because they have some flows that you can do. Also, you know, choose flows that you really enjoy and do them on your own. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? You know, if you really loved that sequence of Jane's vinyasa class last week, pull like your favorite 3 or 4 poses and just do those, right? That's why journal is really helpful. All right, guys, so we've got a few minutes left, and I'm thinking what we'll do is just do a few ohms together. If there's anything anyone else would like to share, feel free. And again, I'll be sending some links to you guys in the replay here. So this is my harmonium. And I was given this as a gift like 2 years ago. This is the same person who gifted us the bowls and the gongs. And one thing that's been beautiful about this quarantine time for me is I've started playing and learning. And before this whole quarantine thing, I was doing weekly lessons with a teacher. And this is a practice, right? This is bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion. So sometimes this is what my daily practice looks like. And I could have been like, oh man, I can't see my teacher. I'm stuck now. I have to wait for, a few months to continue playing. But I YouTubed a few videos. I asked her, hey, can you send me a few videos on this song? I really want to learn that song. And in these 6 weeks, I've learned new things on here. And I know it's not perfect by any means, but I'm still showing up to the practice. So on the other side of this, I will have evolved, right? And not stayed stuck. So my hope is that you guys don't feel stuck. And that's when we use our plant allies, we use daily readings, we use the community. I really want you guys to, if it resonates with you, utilize the Vasu community group on Facebook. If you're feeling inspired, share like, hey guys, here's my new yoga space, check it out. Or, oh, I got this really cool plant. Or, hey, this book's been really helpful for me. That's why we have that page, because it's our virtual community. Again, you can ask for an accountability buddy there, all of that. We miss you too, Tavi. Really, really miss you. So let's finish up with some deep breaths and a few ohms together. I'll be holding a drone for you guys on the harmonium, and we'll do a rolling ohm. So you'll be ohming 10 times. I love the way it sounds in a live class, but we'll just channel into the energy of all 30 of you guys right now, knowing like how cool is it that 11:30 on a Saturday morning, May 2nd, 30 of us are ohming together with each other. So I really want you guys to dip into that energy of it, that feeling, okay? So we're gonna ohm together 10 times. Take a deep breath in. And let it go. And I really want you to honor your ohm. Take your time with it. Whenever you're ready, begin. Shanti, Shanti. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Could you guys feel that Om and the energy of collective community oming together? Know that when you're doing your yoga video at home, there's other people doing the video with you. And know that as teachers, we really channel the energy of you into our flow. When I'm teaching, I think of all of your faces, and that helps me. So know that you are in that video energetically. I just wanted to finish off with a quote for you guys, all about home practice. So, your home practice is for life. Start small, grow it, nurture it, add your own spin and your own spice until you have created a haven inside yourself, a sanctuary for self-soothing and getting life done. A home practice will become your go-to for all things personal, for making life decisions, for facing whatever challenges come your way, and for experiencing life in all of its awesomeness. I just want you to imagine what it would be like to sit on your mat every day, even if it's literally just sitting on your mat with your cat. That could be your practice because it's with intention. And then slowly it builds and it grows and you add your own flares to it, because maybe everything I shared today in terms of offerings for your space doesn't resonate with you. And you want to bring your own spice to it. But just imagine what it would be like if you sat on your mat every day and then the yoga studios reopen. And then you have both. You have a studio practice and a community, and you have your self-soothing, your sovereignty, and the community of your heart. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Luna says we're done. And if you want to stay connected, keep on posting in the Vasu community page and let me know how your home practice is going, what triumphs and tribulations are coming up for you. And like I said, I'll send a follow-up email with the replay for this as well. My hope is that this has been helpful for you, that you feel supported, and that you're excited to get going. Love you guys so much. I miss you guys so much. And yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you're so welcome. Love you, Linda. You're so welcome. Have a great Sunday, guys. I'm going to get outside. I'm thinking I'm going to go to Rocky Neck with the dogs and get outside. You know, that's what I'm talking about going with the flow, right? Like maybe you had decided I'm going to do a restorative yoga class on Saturday, but then you wake up and it's beautiful and you're like, never mind, I'm going to go outside and do like yoga against the trees, or I'm going to do it Ignite, right? Like let nature be your guide. You're welcome, Tommy. Miss you guys. Love you, Jennifer. Love all of you guys so much. All right, I am signing off. Mwah. Namaste, guys.